Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where we chat with startup founders and solopreneurs just like you from all over the globe. During our chat today, picture yourself starting your own startup journey. If our guests can do it, you can too. Every episode of Rising Tide Startups is sponsored by Podbrand Media. Let Podbrand create and host your company branded podcast. Learn more at podbrandmedia.com. This is Rising Tide Startups. My name is Kevin Pruitt. I'm host of this podcast, and we've got a great guest with us today, Lauren Gibson. Lauren, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
So great to be here, Kevin. Thank you.
We've already had a great pre-chat here, and I asked her, I said, hey, you're spinning gold here. You're going to have to wait till I hit the record button because I don't want to lose anything in the process. But Lauren, if you and I met at a networking event, how would you introduce yourself to me?
I love that you asked that question because I am asking something very similar in my brand voice reviews with my clients. And I ask it as a dinner question, actually, but
I may steal that later. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are you at the dinner party? So when I meet in person, I tell people I'm the connector. Simple as that. I find the connection within other people to connect them either to a new idea or to a new person to help them expand their business or expand their own growth.
So let's talk about just personal life. Like, where do you live? Family, short past history, all the above.
Yeah, so I currently live in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, and I moved here recently from doing my MBA at Georgetown in DC. And before that, as you saw, I was traveling quite a bit. I've been to now 44 countries.
Wow.
I used to teach English in Tunisia. I worked in human rights and democracy in Egypt. I took all these crazy trips of like a €1 bus ride across Europe or taking a, no joke, a €3 flight from London to Belgium, for example, with and this was before the pandemic when which means that there was actually no charge on the luggage that you carried on. So it was just €3, not an extra 20 for luggage
Sounds
or
like
anything.
Ryanair.
Yeah, exactly, with Ryanair. You know it, Kevin. So yeah, so my whole backstory has been a whirlwind, and the golden thread that has really tied it together is the connections that I have with other people and the way that I've been able to connect with people internationally and in various industries.
So, a lot of things you described, you were kind of working for someone or working for an entity, working maybe a nonprofit NGO work. But what was that aha moment that said, you know what, I need to kind of do this on my own? Walk us through
Yeah,
that day that you're thinking, I'm going to burn the boats and here we go.
that day came way early, but it took time to come to fruition. And so, what I mean by that is, I recognized in early 2023, actually, that I wanted to start a business because I was recognizing the possibility of having your own income, having your own time, your schedule, owning your life more so without the need of an employer. I was in an unfortunate space where I think a lot of people are what a lot of people are experiencing now, especially with what we're hearing with the Department of Employment in the United States. So I was laid off in August of 2023. And this was a great and a bad thing, of course. At the time, I was moving already back home to Jacksonville, and I knew I wanted to start a business. I was already trying to learn about how to start a business, reading books, listening to podcasts, and but I was ultimately forced into it. For a year, I was doing contract work and trying to apply to roles, but inevitably, I realized that I actually had saved enough money to build a business on my own, and I did not need that steady income at the moment. And the part of the reason is because I worked in Web3 and crypto, and so I actually learned a lot about trading, and I did fine enough for me to sustain myself. And I realized, I have actually built the life that I wanted, and now I just need to act upon it.
Right. I love that. And was that originally the idea that even when you were working in these other jobs, you're thinking, hey, someday I'd like to go out on my own and do something on my own? Or were you like, hey, I'm kind of on the employee route, and I was just kind of forced to transition and you made the mess, made lemonade out of lemons, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think I've ever seen myself climb the corporate ladder,
Hmm.
especially with my background of traveling, being more of a digital nomad, so to say. And when I came back to the US after a lot of my travels, and when I recognized that I actually wanted to be in business, I did take the more traditional route of working in a corporate company where I worked at FIS Global, the largest fintech company in the world. So that gave me a glimpse into how structure works in a workplace, and I'm very grateful for that. But I do think that this drive in me to start my own thing, to own my own time, was really always there.
So let's go back to the moment that you got that redundancy notice that
Yeah.
said, "Hey, thanks for your services no longer needed here," type thing. So, what was the mindset that you had? Would you say it was one of, uh-oh, what do I do now? Or was it like, there's a little bit of relief here that says, I needed that nudge to kind of get me off of dead center to start working toward, doing my own thing? Or was it maybe some combination of the two?
When I was laid off, I was relieved because I saw it coming, not because of me, but because I was working in an industry that was falling. I was working for the NFT market. This space was not growing. It was no longer hype driven. So I realized that it was going to happen. And immediately I felt relief. Of course, a couple weeks later, I was starting to realize, okay, now what do I do with all this free time? Because I don't have this normal schedule where I'm talking to people daily. So I started to fill up my time with just reconnecting with people within my network.
Hmm.
So at Georgetown, just talking to people, how are things going? I started to discover, and I'm still discovering, that there's a lot of people in this upper education level of, say, an MBA who have been laid off. And so this is something that I have been this is a path that I've been going down to represent that person of a more upper level educated person who can actually not take the corporate route, but go the business owner route. And I think it is actually almost even harder for someone who has an upper level education because they have been trained to value their thought process from an employer.
Mm. Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's a psychological concept that I am speaking with almost weekly with people that I know from Georgetown who have been searching for a job for months or a year. It's so hard to transition to this mindset of I can sustain myself with my own knowledge and with my own action, and no one can tell me whether I'm doing a good job or I'm not. There's no KPIs. You're really just starting from zero and you're deciding what you want to do every single day and what is the result that you want to have by the end of the quarter or by the end of the year.
That's really interesting. I've done, as you know, more than 400 episodes, and I think that's the first time that anybody has ever really kind of drilled down in that space. That this the kind of the psychological, battle that you've got to wage, that is, moving from the cubicle jail that you might be in to doing something on your own, especially, in higher education, that might be, even more so, that there's more expectation on that side. I want you to take us, like, let it, pull back the curtain a little bit and let us go into the kind of the solo war room that you were in, that you're thinking, okay, So what am I good at? It's like that virtual Venn diagram you're trying to write. What am I good at? What does the world need? How can I make money? Type thing. Where's that intersection? And so it's one thing to say I'm really good at connecting, or I'm really good at networking. I'm really good at, you fill in the blank. It's a whole other thing to make the leap that says, okay, now I've got to actually monetize this thing. So what was go through the thought process. You're thinking, okay, I can network really well. Um, what was the virtual whiteboard that you were writing out and say, okay, here's all the things I could do, and how did you arrive at where you landed?
I reflect on Steve Jobs's Stanford address in 2005, where he said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward.
Hmm.
You can only connect them looking backwards." And so I was forcing to push the dots looking forward, and the response here is that there is no way to push what is going forward. So you can't write this story going forward as much as you want to. You have to just embody the story and do something every single day. So one of my lessons while building a business is actually that I reflected too long on my entire uh like Zen, I want to say Zen diagram, but like the
Yeah.
ikigai.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I reflected too long on my ikigai and trying to find the intersection of what I'm good at, what I can get paid for,
Hmm.
and what the world needs,
Hmm.
and what people tell me I'm good at. So I am still, despite having a business that is actually paying me what I was earning 2 years ago, finally,
Hmm.
I am still figuring that out. And the beauty of being in a business is that that process really does never stop because you are consistently creating what is the next step of your business and your life.
Hmm.
And that is what an employee usually cannot say because they have one, two, three, maybe like 50 people above them to that may limit their work and their possibility.
Right.
That is to say, the very opposite is if you are working in a corporate company, you can use that as leverage. And so that is why I still use my MBA from Georgetown and the companies that I have worked with as leverage to embody this business owner mindset that I have today so that people can look at me and have and check a box to say, okay, at least that person has credentials.
Right. And I think it is. It's important. I mean, it's hard to write down the kind of the ethereal things on LinkedIn that you may have been involved in, but it's easy to say, okay, I've got an MBA, I've worked for this company, I was in this space, in this industry for 3 years type thing. And that's tangible. That's tangible,
Right.
kind of on paper evidence. But I love the idea of giving yourself permission though to not have it all figured out,
Yes.
and sometimes that may be paralysis that you're thinking I have to figure this out before I can get started, and it didn't sound like to me that you kind of threw that conventional, quote wisdom out the window and said, actually I can't do that, or I wouldn't even move forward. So what you're right now, you spend a lot of time kind of in the newsletter space. What else does your day look like? What other things are you involved in that you're monetizing?
Yeah, and I want to touch on that last point you made, which is to say that to get out of that kind of analysis paralysis space, the best thing is to talk to other people who are doing something similar. So, just as we were speaking earlier about the power of networking, I think that being able to see another person in another space that
Hmm.
you want to be in and be able to have a connection with them, ask them questions that tailor the conversation
Yep.
for yourself is just hugely valuable. As I said earlier, I was listening to dozens of podcasts and watching YouTube clips of people
Hmm.
that I inevitably wanted to become, and that free online education was just so valuable to me. So, so what I recognized and how I monetize myself today is at the beginning of this year, I at the beginning of the year, I told my LinkedIn network online that I was going to launch a newsletter business and I was going to take on 3 pro bono clients. This idea of taking on pro bono clients was said to me dozens of times. And I think it's because I heard it so many times that
Hmm.
I realized, okay, maybe I should just take this as advice. There was a little bit of, and this is also why I think people in like upper level education or people who are older, senior, who may be in a director position and may get laid off, like why it's so hard for them to to start a new business that is a little bit different is because you have to drop your ego.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I've been in, I know someone in a community that I'm in that was the previous CEO of a Fortune 500 company, older guy, my dad's age, baby boomer, and he doesn't work as a CEO anymore, but he wants to still work and coach C-suite executives.
Hmm.
And he has been going through this process in his head of, well, they should just want to work with me because I used to
Yeah.
be the CEO.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you have to learn these new techniques of creating a business. You have to be the salesperson, the marketer, the doer,
The janitor.
the janitor. Yes, you have to do it all, and you don't have an assistant anymore.
Yeah.
And so that is like a big lesson for me is you have to learn to drop your ego when
Hmm.
you are starting a business, starting a new business, but you still have to leverage your background
Hmm.
but learn new skills with this new business. So that's what I did. And I took on 3 pro bono clients at the beginning of the year. One of them was an MBA startup friend. Two of them had been watching my content and they were founders of a startup. And I got testimonials from them and I started talking on LinkedIn about how I am helping them with their newsletter and I would leverage the free work that I was doing to talk about me doing this potentially paid later on. And so that kind of that spiraled and consisted into me learning certain things like cold email, cold
Hmm.
outbound. That didn't work out. I learned that I didn't want to pursue that. I've been now testing ads, and for me, it's what's worked the most is organic marketing and
Hmm.
referrals. And so
Yeah.
that's why I've been using online content like my LinkedIn posts or getting on podcasts like Rising Tide
Hmm.
to help leverage my brand and help people to see that see the other side of me. Because I think, as we were talking about earlier, someone can say, "Oh, I can get you 1,000 leads," but that may be some shady way
Yeah.
of getting it, and it may not actually impact your company. And so I think the new way of work that we're entering is actually people leveraging their brand online.
So does it matter what you're doing as much as it matters, how you're doing it? Like, I've
Mm,
seen people make money doing a variety of things, and whether it's lead generation, newsletters, whether it's marketing, whether it's, coaching, consulting, fill in the blank. But does it matter more how you're doing the work? Does it matter more how you're showing up every day? Does it matter more how much integrity you're bringing to the table when you're doing
mm.
your work type thing as much as what you're doing?
I think it is a little bit of both, actually. I think a lot of like creators who who talk about business may say it's just the how. And that was what I initially wanted to lean into, that, oh, it's just how you're doing it, how you're showing up consistently, how you're showing integrity through every conversation,
Hmm.
how you are, how you show up online. I completely agree with that. But from my experience of trying to figure out my ikigai,
Hmm.
and a year ago, I tried I tried making a business of my complete ikigai. And to be honest, it ended up failing where I'm comfortable with this word, and I think people should be comfortable with it. But what I mean is, I failed because I did not completely pursue it. And the reason why I
Mm,
did not pursue that business model was because I realized I would actually be spending more energy and more input, like the what I would be doing for that business would not result in the level of income that I wanted. So even though I was pursuing all of the how, I was a trustworthy person. I was connecting with people the way that I wanted to.
hmm
It still did matter the what. And I think, yeah, the last point here is that there are structures in business that we have come to accept, and there are very few people who can create a completely new structure. And what I
mm,
mean by that is if you look at a company like Uber or Airbnb, they were actually not the first to create this market, but they took these ideas and productized it the best. So I now recognize it's not important to be the first. It is important to productize maybe a new idea
hmm
in a way that you are bringing your how to it, but still have some integral what that is going to honestly keep you afloat.
Do you think it's important that you're passionate about what you do, or does it matter?
I think passion fades in and out every other day, every other week, especially when you're trying to grow a business and the point is consistency.
And the reason I ask that question is because it's real. I love the responses that I get, when we talk about that question. But
Yeah.
the thing that I think causes me to ask that question is that, it's like Seth Godin talks about the dip, that you've got to go
Mm.
through, or whatever, that trough of despair that
The
you
drop,
find
yeah, the
yourself
drop
in,
of despair.
So how do you get through that if you're just doing a thing versus it seems like to me it might be easier to do it if I cared about what I was doing. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And what I have learned is that it just takes 80% of the time to feel like this is the right thing to do.
Mm,
And in that 20% of the time where you may be in that trough of despair because some terrible event happened or politics, the economy sucks, someone passed away in your family, maybe it's just a really bad day. That
yeah.
20%, the only thing that helps you keep going is the consistent actions that you have put in your day. And so companies know this, and companies help like structure your day by saying you work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Whether you're happy, sometimes whether or not you're sick, you go. And so, as a business owner, we need to learn to put that structure in our day. And for me, that means that lately I have been waking up at 5:45-ish, and I've been going to the gym and going for a 10-minute walk, run, and coming back and taking a quick cold shower, writing in my journal just the thoughts and feelings that I've had, which is something to talk about. I love learning about, I love the act of writing. And then I go to my to-do list. And to be honest, Kevin, I do not always do these completely in order and at perfect timing and
Yeah.
efficiency. But the fact that I have blocked off that time of day to say I will do this, and if I don't do it one day, at least I have
hmm
blocked it off in my day to do it the next day. I'm
Yeah.
still creating that structure in my life to motivate me to continue the consistent actions that will help me build myself and my business.
I I absolutely love the way that you have apparently thought through so many of these things at such a deep level. I mean, I interview people literally from all over the world and
Yeah.
often in this space. And so of those 400, I mean, it's been like 395 two different, founders or startup, leaders. And I just really want to applaud you on just your insights. Your insights are just so uh, well thought out and thoughtful, that I can really tell that you're just not, you don't have canned answers, to questions that we've asked on the podcast. And you really wrestled with some things and I think arrived at the, kind of gotten through some probably some struggles to arrive at a good place, to be. But I'm curious, when you were 16, what did you think you were going to be?
When I was 16,
You're going to
I was,
Bahamas with your parents in the summer on a sailboat.
yeah, well, that was when I was 10.
Okay.
Um, when I was 16, I was actually very depressed. So you talked about the struggles. I went through that in high school when my parents got divorced, and I'm an only child, and it was a very difficult divorce.
Mm,
I was, and it prompted me to feel like there was nothing that mattered in the world because the two people that I loved very much were not together and fighting and putting me inside the middle,
yeah.
which made it very hard to just like want to continue. And so I used to write in my journal like every night and every day about the struggles that I was going through and like what I wanted to be. And for some reason, the emotional side of the divorce of my parents made me tell myself that I wanted to be a speaker, an author. I wanted to be able to voice the feelings that I voiced in the past out loud. And so I've been developing myself to escape that depression, to take ownership of my life, and to hopefully be a voice someday of this new world of work that we're entering in,
Hmm.
which I call the future of work. And it is a space where we are going to take ownership of our lives because we will be forced to, because companies don't necessarily need us as much when we have AI and automation and robots being able
Yeah.
to do most of the work. So what will we have left? And I believe what we'll have left is that feeling that I was lacking in my youth, which is connections. So that is the drive from me, is that struggle of not having that strong connection. And now I recognize the connection of this being an important part of being human, and this is how we can continue to grow ourselves and our businesses and our brands. It is through the power of connections.
That is such a great answer. And now here's a quick word from one of our new sponsors on Rising Tide Startups. Every episode of Rising Tide Startups is sponsored by Pod Brand Media. So you started your own company or branded podcast and now it's fading. Let Podbrand give it new life. Check out podbrandmedia.com to learn more. The question I was going to ask you in a minute is like, hey, take a little bit of a coaching moment here. And
Yeah.
if you're talking to people that are kind of sitting in that cube and they're struggling to, figure out what's the next step.
Mm.
What's the first step maybe to get out of that? And I mean, in some ways you answer that so well just then, but I want you to maybe expand on that a little bit and just say, okay, just speak directly to the audience that says, you know what, I'm kind of struggling where I am. I don't really know what to do next. I kind of have, maybe I could do this, maybe I couldn't do this. Take a coaching corner right here and take a moment to just share your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I don't have it all figured out, right?
We'd be
You know,
worried if you said you did. We probably,
yeah, right. You never do have it all figured out, but I know that when I am going through a tough, indecisive moment of my life where I don't know what path to take, I do end up finding solace in connecting with people and not necessarily talking to them about the problem, but asking them how they're doing and and finding the connective elements between like what they do and the problem that I'm struggling with and seeing how it relates.
If I'm wanting to take that first initial step,
Mm.
how would you coach me to get over the fear of the potential that I'm going to fail?
I'd ask you, do you remember the last time you failed?
And was it terminal?
Yeah, yeah. Like, you know, did your whole life fall apart? Did you die, right? Like, what is the worst thing that could happen when you fail? Life for most of us still continues in some way. And the greatest people who have created the greatest stories that we admire, they sometimes have failed the most. And they use that story as leverage.
Mm.
So if I were to coach you, I would say, what is not don't worry about the failure, but what is the story you want to tell in 10 years?
Oh man, that is so good. And it's interesting because some of these questions I've asked you are, I do have I do try to prep guests with, potential questions and things like that. And none of these were on the list that I said I was going to ask you. So,
That's awesome.
I'm sorry I get to have to chase rabbits here, but you said things that are so interesting and so thought-provoking that, just caused me to want to follow up kind of in a different strain because I think, I do want to play the part of the audience
Yeah.
as we have the podcast. And you've said things that are so interesting and so germane to, what the what you're talking about, the future of work. What does it look
Yeah.
like in post COVID? What does it look like with the AI, explosion that's happening around us? And, work will look different moving forward, and even education. I mean, people are hacking their education, together, and instead of just the traditional, education routes that probably you and I took. But it's just interesting to see what I mean. We've kind of navigated, to use a sailboat analogy. We've navigated the whole cove here. So, what have I not asked you about that you would just like to kind of share that you want to wrap up with? And then I would love for you to tell people where they could find out more about you online and connect with you.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure to be on the pod. I really appreciate your rabbit hole navigation. And I think from the conversation that we've had today, what I would leave people with is a book that helped me actually get out of my shell and start posting on LinkedIn and start getting myself noticed and helped me get leads and start a business is this book, The Artist's Way. And so this book is a 12-week process on writing every single day and unlocking more so this ikigai that we've talked about
Hmm.
here. And you have to write 3 pages every single day for 12 weeks. But
Wow.
the reason why I did this is not because I wanted to be an artist, but it's actually because I read people like Tim Ferriss, Cody Sanchez of Contrarian,
Hmm.
and Noah Kagan of AppSumo.
Hmm.
They say that this is one of the books that they recommend people to read or to collect, like to work on, because you being able to write to yourself your stream of consciousness, what you're going through, there's so much value in your story. And so, what I do today in the business that I decided to start with all of this thought process that I've shared today is I've decided to help people unlock their story through email. And so, what I do is I get on these calls that are almost like a podcast, and I interview people who are founders, agency owners, coaches, and I help tell their story through their email list, which is a huge revenue driver compared to social media. Email lists have a
Yeah.
42x
Yeah.
ROI compared to social media, which is just 2.2x.
And
Yeah, it
often a
sounds
missed
like
opportunity.
often,
People don't even,
often so
yeah.
much because
Yeah.
people have already opted in to say, I appreciate like who you are,
Right.
enough to maybe want to work with you or buy a product or buy something from you someday or connect you with
Hmm.
someone.
Yeah.
So I recognized the power of email lists, and I recognized that I wanted to work one-on-one with individuals and make money from it. And I think the LinkedIn ghostwriting space is a little bit oversaturated.
Hmm.
So that's how I decided to get into the newsletter email marketing game. And so today, I write on LinkedIn, and anyone can find me, Lauren Gibson, or at Link with Lauren. I just changed that. And I also have a newsletter called Connections. So I write about people who have connected the dots, looking backwards, really, and how to, and one tactic, one lesson, one strategy that you can take from that going forward. Because I believe the future of work is all about connections.
I love it, and we will have those links in the show notes for sure for our listeners. But Lauren, just thank you so much for just taking time today and just sharing your story. This has been one of the most I don't want to overuse the word, but really insightful chats that I've had in a very long time.
Mm,
So I really appreciate just your thoughtfulness and just the care you took in responding to the questions and providing good value today and really just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Lauren, have
I
a
love
great
that.
weekend and thanks again.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Ciao.
We hope you heard some great takeaways and are now ready to take action yourself. As always, thank you for listening and helping all boats rise in a rising tide.